Two arrests this week related to that terror network, including a D.C. transit officer accused of trying to provide them with material support. This, as the latest issue of the Islamic State's propaganda magazine calls on Western supporters to carry out more attacks against Christians. Joining us now, Dr. Jasser, who is president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy and co-founder of the Muslim Reform Movement, also the author of A Battle for the Soul of Islam. Welcome. It's great to see you. It's been a while, but there has been so much that has been developing, and this arrest this week of the D.C. transit officer raising big concerns about the fact that ISIS and its recruitment tactics are now going to another level.
Oh, really? Absolutely. And, you know, I think the important thing is that I haven't heard the term lone wolf being used, which is, I think we're starting to get educated on the fact that we're not just countering violent extremism, but violent Islamism. And we thankfully got him as he finally violated a law in which he tried to transmit money to an ISIS operative, which was undercover FBI agent. We also realized that he had connections to Jasser, who was part of Revolution Muslim that was arrested earlier. Also the North Carolina arrest that was also connected to Elton Simpson. So we're finding that at least in the United States, we're following up on the connections of many of these radicals, as opposed to in Europe, they follow up on many connections, but we saw that some of the acts in Nice and elsewhere were folks that had been on the radar of security apparatuses, but yet had not committed acts that had brought them under arrest. So the lone wolf theory has to die. Secondly, we realize that precursor ideologies of political Islam, the supremacism of the Sharia state, needs to be monitored. We can't wait for them to commit that act of violence. We have to change the mantra from countering violent extremism to countering violent Islamism.
No, as you point out, it's really very positive that we have been able to follow up on connecting the dots in this country with individuals who are aligned and in the process of making inroads with ISIS. But FBI Director James Comey has said on a number of occasions that we cannot be 24/7 in all 50 states monitoring the situation because the agency just doesn't have the resources. At the same time, though, he pointed out to a big concern for the FBI and other law enforcement agencies is in the fact that right now, with ISIS losing ground with territory in Iraq, that this is now changing the dynamic, so to speak, so that that group is focused and targeting Western interests and recruitment in Europe and the U.S. to go forward with its mission.
Absolutely. And you know, the key, Uma, is that we're fighting something that's an inspiration of an Islamic State. They're attracting any jihadi that wants to die for this Islamo-nationalism, Islamo-patriotism. And until the Homeland Security can't do this alone, we need to engage groups like our Muslim Reform Movement, who acknowledges that we would only want to die for American nationalism, French nationalism, Canadian nationalism. It has to be a public-private partnership of Muslims that get it, that are reformers. And by the way, we can't defeat this unless we also completely decimate ISIS in Iraq and Syria. And unfortunately, by handing Iraq to Iran, by handing Syria to Assad and Iranian hegemony, we have allowed sort of the Sunnis to back away, lose Syrian and Iraqi sovereignty to sort of this battle between Sunni and Shia, which has allowed ISIS to sort of enrage the Sunni Islamism versus the Shia Islamism. And without a strategy to empower Iraqi nationalism and Syrian nationalism in that revolution against both Assad and ISIS, this disease, this cancer will continue to spread and spill over into Europe as long as we can even dream of.
And really quickly, I want to point out the fact that there is, you know, we've been talking over time, you and I, about the fact that, you know, the social media component of all of this and the slick methods that ISIS has in terms of its production values and what it does on the internet to try to recruit individuals. Its latest magazine, online magazine, Dubique, now is focused on getting recruits to target Christians, and it is also referencing recent attacks that have happened here in the U.S. So it's really up to date, and it's really going after an audience that is set to go after Western interests in a very big way here.
Oh, and if you look at the material they're putting out, it's not simply a cult. It's not simply a wacky evil movement. This is a movement that's tapping into sort of the Islamic theocratic supremacy. So what they're doing is they're targeting the image of the cross. They're using militarily Christians as shields against the bombing operations that we're trying to do in Iraq or Syria. But at the end of the day, they want to divide the world into the land of Islam and the land of war, as they would call it in Arabic. And we have to engage a counter-narrative, not only that the violence is bad, but a counter-narrative that we Muslims want to reject the Islamic State and all Islamic states. We don't want a caliphate. And until America, just as we did in the Cold War, starts to really push social media at every level that it's the Salafi jihadism. We should have a mantra. It's the Salafi jihadism, stupid, and that's what we want to defeat. And Muslims need to do that. Quilliam Foundation, many organizations have been trying to do that, but even the Pope Ummah this week said, well, it's not Islam. He compared it to, you know, violence in Rome. Those moral equivalencies don't help. We have to take sides within the House of Islam, and we need every leader, faith leaders, political leaders, to join us in this battle.
Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, I know you're on the forefront of this, and you are making a big difference in significant ways. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us once again.
Anytime. Thanks for having me, Uma.